The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the morning air of Millstone Diner, that old corner place where cracked tiles whispered stories and sunlight streamed through dusty blinds like old memories that refused to fade. Behind the counter stood an elderly woman, her silver hair tied neatly under a faded blue cap, her hands steady though her soul carried years of storms. Her name was Martha Greenfield, 72 years old, the kind of woman whose smile could make strangers feel at home even when the world had turned its back on them. She'd lost her husband to a heart attack 2 winters ago, lost her home to medical bills, but not once did she lose her faith in kindness. Every morning she walked down Oak Street before sunrise, greeting the stray cat that followed her and whispering a small prayer before stepping into the diner. It was more than just a job. It was the last piece of her dignity. But dignity that morning would be tested in a way that would shake an entire town. The bell above the door jingled, and 3 young men swaggered in, dressed in expensive jackets, their voices loud and careless, the kind of laughter that dripped privilege. They were the sons of the powerful, the kind who thought the world was theirs because they'd never been told otherwise. The tallest one, Chase Weller, son of billionaire developer Bryce Weller Sr., slammed his designer watch on the table and shouted for service as if the diner were his playground. Martha smiled softly, pen in hand, walking over. "Good morning, dears. What can I get you?" she asked kindly. "You can start by moving faster," Chase sneered. His friends laughed. She nodded, unfazed, and poured coffee into their cups. But as she turned, his friend Landon whispered something crude about her age, and Chase, enjoying the attention, tilted his cup, letting coffee spill intentionally onto the table. "Oops," he said with a smirk. "Guess someone's hands aren't as steady as they used to be." The laughter was sharp, ugly, echoing louder than the jukebox. Martha blinked, gripping the pot tighter. She wanted to say something, but the words stayed buried beneath decades of politeness. Then Chase leaned closer, his grin wicked, and spat directly on her apron. The entire diner froze. The sound of the spit hitting cloth was small, but it sliced through the air like a whip. Martha gasped softly, her eyes glistening, but she didn't shout. She didn't even flinch. She just whispered, "I'm sorry, sir," and turned away, her shoulders trembling under the weight of humiliation. A hush fell across the diner. People looked away, ashamed for her, yet none of them stood up. But one man did. In the corner booth near the window, a shadow stirred. His name was Rex Dalton, a retired Marine turned biker, known by some as the man who once took a bullet for a stranger in Afghanistan. His leather vest bore the insignia of the Iron Saints, a small motorcycle club with a code of respect carved into their hearts. He'd been drinking his morning black coffee, minding his own business, until he saw that spit. Without saying a word, he rose, his boots heavy on the checkered floor. Every eye followed as he walked slowly toward the boys. His friends, 3 men in matching vests, followed, their presence filling the small diner with silent authority. Rex stopped by the table. The laughter died instantly. Chase shifted uncomfortably, trying to hold his smirk but failing. "Can I help you?" he said, trying to sound brave. Rex didn't answer right away. He picked up the fallen coffee pot, wiped it with a napkin, and placed it back on the counter. Then he looked at Martha. "Ma'am," he said softly, "did that boy hurt you?" She shook her head, whispering, "It's fine, please don't." But Rex turned back, his voice low and controlled, the kind of calm that made the air itself tense. "No, it's not fine," he said. "You think respect is optional?" Chase tried to laugh, but it came out forced. "It's just a joke, man." Rex's gaze didn't waver. "Then laugh," he said, stepping closer. "Laugh again." Silence. The boy's smirk vanished. "You ever worked a day in your life?" Rex asked. "Ever had someone talk down to you because they thought money made them better?" Chase swallowed hard. "Didn't think so." Rex leaned in, his voice a quiet thunder. "You spit on her, but you really spit on everyone who's ever served you, helped you, or cleaned up your mess. That ends now." He motioned to the counter. "Pick up that rag. You're going to clean what you've done." Chase froze. His friends didn't move. The entire diner watched, every breath held. Then slowly, with trembling hands, Chase picked up the rag. He knelt, wiping the floor, the sound of the cloth against the tiles echoing louder than his father's wealth ever had. Martha whispered, "Please, you don't have to." But Rex shook his head. "He does." The boy cleaned, and in that moment, something inside him cracked, not from fear but realization. He'd spent his whole life thinking power meant never saying sorry. But as he scrubbed the floor of that old diner, surrounded by people who finally saw him not as the rich man's son, but as a boy trying to understand humanity, something shifted. When he stood, his eyes were red. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Martha smiled, tired but kind. "It's all right, dear. Just don't forget what this feels like." Rex gave a small nod, his mission complete. But that was just the beginning of the story. That night when the diner closed, Chase returned alone. The town's lights flickered through the rain, reflecting his guilt in every puddle. He walked in, holding a small envelope. "Miss Martha," he said, voice breaking. "I came to apologize properly." Inside the envelope was cash, his allowance, a ridiculous amount for a young man who never earned it. "Please take it," he said. "I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to make things right." She looked at the envelope and pushed it back. "Money can't fix disrespect, son," she said. "But kindness can." He nodded, tears forming. "Then tell me what I can do." She thought for a long moment. "There's a shelter downtown," she said. "They feed families who can't afford a meal. Go there, work there, serve others." He nodded again, silently walking out. Rex, who'd been sitting by the window smoking a cigar, watched him leave and muttered, "Maybe he'll find himself before his money does." The next few weeks changed everything. Chase did go to that shelter. At first, the volunteers didn't believe he'd show up, but he did, every day. He served food, washed dishes, carried boxes. The soft hands that once tossed luxury now bore small scars of effort. He never told anyone why he was there. But one afternoon, while handing soup to an old veteran, he looked into eyes that reminded him of Rex's. That man said, "Respect isn't about who you are, son. It's about how you treat those who have less." And Chase finally understood. Months later, a letter arrived at the diner. It was from the shelter. "Dear Miss Martha," it read, "we want to thank you for sending us one of the most dedicated volunteers we've ever had. His compassion has inspired everyone here." Enclosed was a donation receipt, anonymously signed, but she knew. Chase had donated his entire trust fund to rebuild the diner's broken roof and feed the shelter for a year. Martha cried quietly in the kitchen, the tears falling not from pain but pride. She didn't tell anyone what he'd done, but the story began to spread anyway, through whispers, through posts, through the people who'd been in the diner that day. What had begun as cruelty turned into a story of redemption that touched thousands. One of the bikers posted a photo of Martha serving coffee to a smiling Chase. The caption read, "Respect learned. Forgiveness earned." It went viral within hours. News outlets called it the Diner Redemption. People across the world shared it, writing their own reflections about how kindness can humble even the proudest heart. A week later, the diner was busier than ever. People came from other towns just to meet Martha, to thank her for reminding them that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength. Chase still came by, not as a customer, but as a helper. He refilled coffee, swept floors, and called Martha ma'am with genuine warmth. One afternoon, she told him, "Son, you've changed." He smiled faintly. "No, ma'am. You changed me." Rex walked in just then, nodding approvingly. "Guess the kid turned out okay," he said. "Maybe kindness is louder than pride after all." Martha laughed softly, pouring him his usual cup. "Always has been, dear." And for the first time in years, the diner felt brighter. The walls that had seen cruelty now glowed with compassion. The boy who once spat on a woman now protected her dignity like it was sacred. And the woman who'd been humiliated became the quiet hero of a story that reminded the world what grace looks like when it stands against arrogance. That night, when the lights dimmed and the last chair was turned upside down, Martha sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker. The world outside was still cruel in places, still cold, but she smiled. Because she'd seen proof that one act of kindness could ripple across lives, breaking cycles of hate, teaching lessons no punishment could. The next morning, as Dawn painted the diner in gold, she found a small card on the counter. It simply read, "Thank you for not giving up on me." It wasn't signed, but she didn't need to guess. She looked up at the sky, whispering, "That's what love does, son. It never gives up." And as she poured the first cup of coffee of a new day, she realized something. Forgiveness had given her back the dignity she thought she lost. And in return, it had saved a soul from losing his. So if this story touched your heart, take a moment right now to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner, because stories like this remind us that the smallest act of compassion can